Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. Welcome to tonight's show, and thank you so much for inviting me into your living room, computer, phone, wherever you're watching. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe. If you are watching on Facebook, please register with StreamYard so I can see who I'm talking to when you comment and question. I want to thank our supporters. They keep the show going. They keep all of this cool technology and all of that stuff. I want to thank Ruth, Ray, Michelle, Kirsten, Heidi. You guys rock. Thank you so much for your support and keeping me on the air. But most of all, thank you for watching, because that way I'm not talking to myself. I love your input and everything that you're doing. If you would like to sponsor the show and help keep us on the air, you can go to a whole bunch of different places. Patreon is under Fireside Creators. Cafe Press is under Sherry Palace, and I've got all kinds of really cool stuff on there. This is one of them. I've got my Girl Power shirt on today because I'm pretty upset with the United States right now, but there's all kinds of really cool shirts and coffee mugs, and you can even get sheets on there. Go figure. So I appreciate your support. You can find all of this stuff on my website under sherrypalace.com, and then just hit that subscribe or support store link or whatever it is. It's all up there. Okay, so tonight's show is on humanity's role on this planet. Do we have a role? What are we here for? Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? All of that good stuff. So I have two of my favorite gentlemen on today. The first panel guest is Matthew. Matthew Distefano is the author of multiple books. In fact, he's got a new one coming out in June. Columnist for Patheos, co-host of the Heretic Happy Hour podcast, social worker, and hip-hop artist. Welcome, Matthew. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me back. I think this is my second or third time. I don't remember.
Something like that. I'm so glad you came back. You know, the party just continues.
That's right.
And our next panel guest is Brady. Brady's been on a few times also. Brady Hardin is a secular humanist who co-hosts a Life After podcast after experiencing spiritual abuse. He grew up in an unstable Southern Baptist household, which inadvertently pushed him to commit harder to the church. He committed his future repressing his homosexuality and to the full-time ministry. During a time of great loss and spiritual abuse, he left the faith and finally gave freedom to his sexuality. Years into deconstruction, he created the Life After podcast and community to help others identify spiritual abuse, trust professional therapy, and heal from religious trauma. Welcome, Brady.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here again. I need to shorten that thing. Also, I think this might be my fourth or fifth time. If it is my fifth time after watching Saturday Night Live, I think you owe me a jacket or something.
I think so.
I joined the 5 Club. Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
I will get on that.
Thank you.
I think, does it have to be green?
It has to be green. I think Steve Martin,
Something like that, right?
Martin Short has to give it to me or something.
Okay. But if I get you one, Anna and Michelle are going to bother me too. So we'll have to get it together and start doing fireside jackets.
Deal. I like that.
So tonight we are going to talk about humans' role on this planet. And I wanted you guys here because you definitely have a humanistic view now. After the paths that you guys have crossed and all of that. So I wanted to talk about the way you see it. I mean, right now, I have my Girl Power shirt on because I am extremely upset about the SCOTUS potential ruling coming out in June. And I'm bringing that up here because it is a point of rule, right? People think that they have to rule us. And I think that generates a lot from old religion where we had the kings and the ruling. But currently, in today's day and age, we look at that as the ability to kill, the ability to control. When back in the old days, it was to take care of your people, to make sure your people were healthy and well and happy. We have examples throughout the Bible of bad kings and bad rule. And I think that now, because we're failing to learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it, and we're just screwing this planet. And I don't know what we do. You know, we need to define our roles more. So where do you see us, Matthew?
Yeah, it's a tough question because it's hard to like pigeonhole exactly to answer your question. Like, what do we do? It's very difficult because there's like 7 or 8 billion of us, and we can feel so small and feel like our impact for good or for ill on the planet is negligible, but it's really not. And I'm just to the point like in my life where I can only do what I can do and try to educate as best as I can in the small circles I run in.
Exactly.
So will I change the course of climate change, for instance? It's a big ship, and so my contribution might not do much. But I think the only thing I can do is have a clear conscience. So I try to do as much as I can personally in my own life to do what I can. So I garden, I plant. I'm big into permaculture. I recycle as much as I can. I pick up trash. I don't use as much as I'm able. I don't try to use like one-time plastic things. And at the same time, I try not to judge people who aren't able to do all the things that privileged people can do. Because let's be honest, I got kicked out of a Facebook group for this. I said doing things that are quote unquote green takes a level of privilege because it's really expensive, and that's unfortunate. Because so there's this systemic issue that needs to be addressed, and I don't have the answer to that. I wish I did.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I just moved into my new place, and recycling is huge here in California. It was negligible in Florida. No one did it. No one talked about it. I mean, we had bins, whatever. It just wasn't a thing in Florida. Here, it's huge. I love it. So I go to look for a recycling bin, trash can, something like that. The cheapest trash can I could find that was for recycling or a combination was $45 for a trash can. So I'm relegated to Walmart bags and using those things. And that's just, I mean, I sat there and thought, what, only the wealthy can recycle? I mean, in order to make this functional for me to not, have bugs or trash or any of this falling all over the place, I need to get a recycling bin.
Yeah. And only the wealthy can shop all organic, and only the wealthy can drive electric cars. And, forever I drove an old, I drive a 98 Ford Ranger now. I can't afford an all electric car. I can barely afford to. I mean, we eat organic as much as we can, but I try to grow my own food and compost and do all that. But a lot of people don't even have that ability, because what are you going to do? Are you going to spend $50,000 on a new car that is eco-friendly, or are you going to drive your old beater? I mean, it's not even a choice for many people, unfortunately.
Yeah. Brady, what do you say?
I kind of like to zoom back a little bit with the question of, I think it's very important to look at like individualistic responsibility, but I think also we open into a different conversation. We talk about what is our societal, or who are we as a people, and what is our responsibility as a species of working together. To me, that's where I guess I get a little bit more excited, is like the bigger picture of ways that we can, as Matthew said, educate and spread that information, and so that there is an understanding. But also, I was thinking back about what you said too about, with great power comes responsibility. And as humans and as people who are aware and we can understand consequences, we can understand cause and effect. It's something that we can study the data and understand and educate more and more on. Understanding like how we can use our different tools as humanity of storytelling, and also just very practical things like recycling. And honestly, I think Gen Z is going to come up with some really like fucking amazing technology that's going to change a lot of things for us as well. So to me, it's the answer is more of like, as a species, as a people who are aware, what can we do? We can continue to educate. We can teach our kids to continue doing better, and also to be looking for the answers of how do we fix the problems of the generations before us in a way that we're also looking forward and saying, how are we not only going to create less problems for those in front of us if there are any generations, right? But also like, how can we continue to prepare them to as Indigenous people talk about the seventh generation ahead, of thinking that far ahead inside of our society and as our culture. So kind of having to unify under some sort of mythos underneath that sort of banner, I think it's going to be very important for us going forward too.
Well, I think if we removed the individualism that is plaguing our country right now, all of that, well, all is probably too optimistic, but a lot of that would fall into place, right? Gardens would be more accepted. If we're looking at
Oh
things
God,
as the community base, then you're not, looking at private tables in a restaurant as much. You're looking at big tables feeding everybody. You're not looking,
yes.
as in an individualistic way. I mean, when I see people posing with dead animals that they have just shot for sport, I mean, that in my mind encapsulates our rule over this planet, and where we thinking that we can just destroy everything because it's our every whim and we can. And that individualistic thinking is what's killing everything. It's killing people, it's killing poor people, it's killing animals, it's killing our environment. And unless we come together and know that our role is that of one of culture, not
Mm.
individualism. I mean, Steve Slocum, I asked him to be on the show, but he's actually building spacecrafts right now.
What?
Yeah, I
I
know.
know him.
I
How
know
is
it
he?
doesn't even look. It doesn't even sound real, but
Okay, Steve.
he cracks me up. Um, but he always says that we're nothing but ants,
Yeah.
and that really, at first, kind of shook me. But I've been processing it over the years of knowing him. And now I disagree even more because ants are more communal. They work together
Yeah. They
better.
kind of have their shit together. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
They don't have to talk. They just spit chemicals at each other. You know. And
they
then
help each other. They got each other's
yeah.
backs. So at first I was like, "How dare you say we're nothing but ants?" And now years later, I'm like, "Well, ants are probably even better than us at this point." So I
Because
mean,
they work together. The
They
team.
certainly, yeah, they certainly work together to get things done.
yeah, yeah.
You don't see, the wealthiest ant hoarding all of the resources and the rest of the ants not having anything.
No. I mean,
I,
even in a beehive,
Right.
there's a
oh
queen,
God, yeah. I mean, we're
you
in the
know?
same class phylum. I don't remember. So yeah, they connect. But like, what's interesting to me is how they all work as one organism, and it goes back to the fucking Bible imagery. The like, the body, one body, many parts. But like the beehive idea is so much better because they are individuals who are choosing to be part of a team, and yes, they're chemically compelled to do these certain things, but the idea is that they are working as one organism. If I'm
Yeah.
hungry, I go out and eat. If that hive is hungry, it sends out its hand to go
Yeah.
find the food and bring it back, and it becomes like this mega body. The other day, I was taking a walk with my son, and we were discussing superheroes and the ones that he likes. And one thing that he's mentioned more than once, and I almost cry every time, is how much he likes stories that have to do with teamwork. We'll talk about
Yeah.
the X-Men. He's like, yeah, I like the X-Men because each one's got their own thing, but they all have to work together. And I realize that that's the same reason I'm super attracted to Star Trek. But it comes to that same thing: is if we are able to all do the things that we're good at doing in order to influence culture and influence like the human huge hive organism, um, that's where, I don't know, I feel like us and people who we are, we're aware, and we also have the ability to communicate well. I feel like that's kind of where a lot of us are going to have to fit in and fill in.
Well, see, but on some level, they do believe it because that's the military, right? The military has to work together. They have to be that organism. The difference is that is for power of the controllers as opposed to power of the people. If we work together, I mean, we have that in us. We have that desire. We see that. What the problem is our ego gets involved, and we want to be number one. We want to be that queen ant that exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in controlling others, and controlling animals, and controlling the environment, and all of that, it's all ego based. So if we are not, my whole slogan is walk in love. But if we are walking in love with our neighbors, then these things are going to take place. We're not going to say, well, I'm going to go kill that animal because it's awesome and I want it as a rug. We're going to see it as a life. We're going to see our neighbors as a life that we are here to walk each other's and to hold each other's hands. This individualism and this 1% and this dichotomy between the rich and the poor, it is not only affecting our economics, but it's truly affecting our climate, our entire world. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It absolutely. The hard part, though, is I think I agree with you, but at the same time, like I think it's more than just like an ego thing, because we're all born into a system, right? We're all born into this structure, this capitalistic culture in America, where, like, in order to do all the things that we want to do, it takes time and effort and resources, and many of us are just scraping by just to be able to function in the system. We don't have the time and resources and energy to even change the system, because we're spending, like, personally, I have like 8 sources of income just to be able to get by and make sure my daughter has the things that she needs and all these kind of things, and my wife works as well. So I think it's ego based too. But even the people that do notice the change, and I don't want to come across as like a cynic in this show, but part of my like pessimism is that those of us who do recognize the change and what it would take, like at the end of the day, like, what are you supposed to do when you have to work like 10, 12, 14 hours in a day, 6 days a week?
I still think that's part of the system, and that's structured.
Oh, it's absolutely. And I think it's intentional.
Keep us as ants.
Right, because if we're constantly moving in that survival mode,
Right.
we don't have the extra resources to move towards longer-term thinking. Because if we're on survival, it's just about how do we get to tomorrow? How do we get to tomorrow?
Right.
Whereas what is really going to be needed for huge systemic change, racially, economically, all of the lines, has to do with taking a step and thinking of our futures, thinking about the future generations, and what is not just life going to be like for them, and how are we going to preserve what's important to us, and those future generations, but more of what's going to be important to them. How do we start building a structure and society in a way that is going to support them, give them the resources that they need, instead of constantly just trying to fix the previous generations while perpetuating the same goddamn systems that created the issues in the first place. And one thing that you mentioned, is it affects different parts of the world. Unfortunately, people of color, and definitely towards the equator, all of that, they are being affected a lot more than white-skinned people. And then economically, because we've stripped those places of resources, it's even worse. And so it's like the economic side compounds on top of that, and we're just fucking future generations up more and more.
Until those waterfront mansions are underwater, though.
Right.
It's going to affect everybody. I mean, and we're talking about all over the Midwest have been tornadoes, and
I'm used to them.
Crazy. I mean, not just it's run of the mill. It's that time. I mean, it's getting worse everywhere, and so there's not going to be the greed. Is going to affect the 1%, and hit us white people later. But we're still going to be impacted. We're still going to have all of these things because we all live on this planet. We're all supposed to be stewards of it, and we're treating it like it's all a big dump. especially in LA. I left California when I was 21. So I was still a kid. I was kind of sheltered still. I was still an evangelical, even though I was a sinner and all of that stuff. But Florida's pretty clean. And, as much as there's Florida men, and as much as I have to say, Florida is a pretty clean state. I didn't realize that until I came to LA.
Oh, wow.
And just to see the carelessness, the trash, the dumping, the not minding your own yard or even your own backyard. I mean, it could be as simple as picking up trash. That's making our home, our planet. I mean, people are like, fuck it, let's go to Mars. I mean, how can we say that this is our planet and we are the supreme creature on it if we can't even take care of our own shit? If we can't keep our own planet clean enough and healthy enough because of greed, it all boils down to greed. That we need to go and conquer another planet just in case we ruin this one. It's just,
or because we're ruining this one.
Yeah, and because we're failing to recognize it too.
I had the same realization when I went to Ireland a couple years ago, and there were not only were there no cops on the streets, which I thought was amazing. There was no trash anywhere. We drove the whole country like for 10 days. You come back here and it is just, there is trash everywhere. And it makes you kind of sick that, in this so-called progressive state that we live in, I'm in California as well, that it's like I think for the most part, like we just talk a big game, because if you just see the actual impact that we have, like it's again why I'm so pessimistic. I mean, during when COVID hit, I spent a lot of time just picking up trash just because. And I had someone drive by and throw a 7-Up bottle at me as I'm picking up trash. And it was just like kind of emblematic of our attitude toward the planet. And I was just like, oh, this fucking sucks.
So how do we fix it? How do we, as three struggling white people who shouldn't be necessarily affected by these things, but we're smart enough to know that we are, how do we help the people who can't? How do we help create this change? Because technically we're supposed to have this power. Let's try and use it, right? Can we? I mean, I am today. I am right before this show. Matthew said, well, you seem a little bit fired up today. Like, I am. And yeah. I am hugely fired up because I'm sick of idiots and assholes having the loudest voices. Yes. I'm sick of the ignorant wanting to control everybody. And today's, the announcement of the SCOTUS pending ruling and all of that is really showing that. If we don't speak up, if we don't do something, we are doomed, right? So is there anything we can do as mere mortals?
I think so. I mean, we have to do what we can. We have to do something, right? Like, if we're the only ones aware of this, we can't rely on other species to jump up and do something. So to me, I'm just want to use what's available to us as humans of how to communicate. And a lot of my stuff, me, goes back to Star Trek. Like, the storytelling that they use creates an optimistic view of the future, which may not be accurate at all, but it is able to, through that storytelling, show this is what could happen. This is as a way of educating, as a way of doing that. I also think of like Gen Z now, of how aware they are of growing up with these problems of yes, there needs to be more awareness, and there will be, but just that they're growing up in a different generation than even I was. And I'm 36, and just how different that generation was on queer people, on women's rights, on, there's just all these things that when it becomes necessary, there is like a pretty quick like education and understanding through that exposure. I'm hoping and I'm praying that somehow through that humanity can wake itself up and pull itself out of its own ass and wake up to these issues, not just as thinking of the Bible. Well, no, we know how the world's going to end because the Bible told us, and so that's all we have to.
Well, that's the whole apocalyptic bullshit that people are like, it's just going to blow up anyway. Jesus is going to return, so who cares? Kills me.
Yeah, that's all bullshit, and I think they know it, but maybe not. I don't know. For me, like I guess I have like two-pronged approach. I think you have to do locally what you can.
Yeah.
You have to get involved in serving the poor and the marginalized in your community, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's people on the street, the unhoused, like just doing the nuts and bolts things, like getting them food. And I think then you also have to, when you partake in the system of politics and you put your name to a vote, I think you have to vote with the marginalized in mind.
Yes.
So you have to vote for folks who are going to do the most for the marginalized, and no system is perfect. Ours is certainly flawed, as we all know. But I think if you vote with the marginalized in mind, you're better off. And so, I mean, I personally if someone's not LGBTQ affirming, if someone's not doing actual anti-racist work, like they don't have my vote, and they can talk any game they want, but you're not going to get me. You're not going to get me on board unless you're actually worried about the people that are impacted the most from the clusterfuck that we have created.
I know this is not normal because we're supposed to hate the generations that have come since us, but Gen Z really gives me a lot of hope. There was a news story probably about a year ago now where a whole bunch of elementary kids went to Dianne Feinstein's office, and they gave her hell over climate change and this is our planet. She lost any support that she ever had from mine, which wasn't much to begin with, when she dismissed them, told them that they were just children and they didn't know the way of the world. That actually gave me so much hope for that generation because they see it. They're not indoctrinated by the gas companies. They're not indoctrinated. They see that their world is literally collapsing. They recognize the bullshit. And I think that they are truly, I mean, I don't mean to be too optimistic. We got Matthew being pessimistic and me being overly optimistic.
Sherry, you got to balance me out here.
But I am really hopeful for them. I mean, they are really, they're speaking out. They're doing things on gun control, climate change, student loans. They are not as passive as my generation is. They're not as stuck in their ways. There was this really cool story the other day about how a woman was giving away her, I'm probably going to get this totally messed up, so forgive me, it's ignorance, but her child had just become a trans boy. So she had purchased the prom dress before her child had become a trans boy. So she was selling the prom dress online. And a girl bought it, and this mother told the girl the story. And this Gen Zer got so excited and said, "Oh my God, that I'm the first girl to wear it." That mentality, seeing that, not thinking, "Oh my God, a trans, had this dress," really saw the trans humanity, her own humanity, and was able to distinguish those and celebrate it, was so beautiful and something that my generation struggles with every day.
It's interesting too. Okay, because Feinstein, right? Thinking of her, I always associated her with Harvey Milk, because
with what?
Harvey Milk, after he was
right?
He took, and so in that movement at that time, yes, she seemed progressive and helpful in one very specific way.
Yeah.
And what that teaches me is that as we get older, we need to be mindful of what else do we need to be listening to,
huge.
and what do we need to be doing different. they're sometimes problematic, but RuPaul always talks about how the young people are his teachers. Okay, and I like that. It's a good point of just like listening to what are young people doing, because they realize, I mean, my generation, we saw 9/11. That woke us up to, fuck, this is junior high. This should not be happening. And now our lives are changed because we're having to think in a different way than previous generations. So we had a different environment that we had to adapt to.
Yeah.
And if you think about any simulation in your head of how could, I played a lot of SimCity. Okay. So like I could see the world kind of like going fast and how it progresses and how it does everything. And it makes sense that as we get so much culture and so many different things in the world's becoming smaller because of the internet, it makes sense that these changes are going to be quick.
Yeah.
And so that environment is going to be quick. And so that means that our awareness and our adaptability has to match that. Here's my cat, everyone. Has to match that. And we have to be able to keep up with that to survive and to thrive. So Feinstein, great. Thank you for being there for gays in the 19 whatever. But we're in 2022 now.
Yeah.
And now all of those people who've worked out that queer is cool, because it is, because I'm fucking queer and I'm cool. Now fucking listen to them talk to you about the earth you're about to leave any fucking second, and that they're gonna have for 100% more of their life. Like, wake up, listen. And those who are having to adapt to a different world than us, instead of fighting for the, oh no, we need to keep the world exactly the same as how we adapted because we're tired of adapting and we don't want to do it anymore. No, fuck that. It's not about us. It's about the seventh fucking generation,
Well, and for the first time, we are leaving a worse planet, worse economy for our children. That wasn't the American way, and greed has took over so much that it's destroying our planet and our people, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, the Koch brothers, one's dead, I know, but they have children. The Trumps, they have grandchildren. All of these people in power, can they not see beyond their own nose to know that their generations after them are going to be doomed too?
Right.
I mean, we're still even debating that there's climate change. That's just insane to me. I mean, how
Well,
can this even be a
that's
debate?
the thing. Like, you have people who deny it, and so what's the big problem? Like, you mentioned people in power and their kids. Well, their kids and grandkids are going to be just fine in their minds. They don't even believe it, and I don't.
True.
How do you get people? And you're the host. I'm not interviewing, but how do you get people to wake up to the fact that there is even climate change, or even systemic racism, or even still homophobia, or even still women's inequality, like as we've seen with the potential SCOTUS decision? They deny that. I mean, they deny that Trump lost the election. I mean, for God's sake, we're living into like almost a parallel universe of facts, and I don't. That's part of why I'm so pessimistic. You get people who they don't even see that these things are real.
Well, and that's part of the reason I do this show is for an education, as my own education as well. But I mean, I was having a debate with a longtime friend. He and I've been friends for more than 20 years today about education. And he was saying nothing is free. My tax dollars shouldn't, go towards education. And I said, it's the best investment that we could ever do.
Right.
It's better. It's more important than roads. It's more important than bridges. If we have an ignorant electorate, if we have an ignorant society, we are doomed. I mean, you look at the countries where people have to pay to go to elementary school, to the formative schools, and they're not good. Their societies struggle. You look at all of these countries where education is not a focus, and they're doomed. They're struggling. They remain a third world country. So if we are going to, I mean, I don't think we're a first world country anymore. I think we're a third world country with technology, but I digress. If we are going to progress, if we are going to be the power in this country, we have to educate people. And these people thinking that they know more than doctors, than they know more than all of this because of their indoctrination or because of their political side, it's literally killing us all.
Yeah.
Well, it's the type of democracy I believe Plato was most worried about, and why he didn't really have too much great things to say about democracy was because of the type of electorate that we're seeing. But I don't want to be too pessimistic, because you're right. Like, the younger generations are doing things that we just simply, I mean, I'm 39, so Brady, you and I are the same type of, in the same ballpark. And we're like on the edge of it. Like, I mean, my daughter yesterday came home and like she's going on a field trip where she's not allowed to wear a two-piece, and the boys are allowed to have their shirts off. And so she was just like, because you don't want to, you're going to distract the boys. And she said something that was brilliant. She's 11. She was like, "It's not my responsibility what the boys think."
Thank you.
But we weren't. But we didn't. But our generation, we didn't think like that.
No.
I mean, we are now, but almost because of them. Like, we are learning from the younger generations that you're right. Like, we have had to struggle our entire like adult lives working through that, especially if you came from purity culture, and and my daughter at 11's like already got it. She's like, "No, I'm not responsible for how you behave or what you think. Like, this is
good for her."
And so she was like, "I'm going to talk to my teacher," and I was like, "Girl, shoot."
Yeah, I mean, I was taught I was fully responsible for everything a man did.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, you were raised evangelical, so that was the stock sort of,
Yeah.
But so they do give me hope.
They do.
I mean, to quote Gandalf, a fool's hope, but it's a hope.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, historically speaking, we say, "What is wrong with those children?" Now I'm saying, you go, kids. It's absolutely amazing to me. I was not thinking about politics when I was in elementary school. I was not thinking about politics when I was in high school. And to see these kids really taking note, and it could be from the internet. I mean, years ago when, God, I'm going to totally date myself like you guys just didn't, saying you're in your 30s. But anyway, when computers started to take over, as a salesperson, one of my pitches was, "This is going to save you so much time," right? "Oh my God, just do the data entry, get it all in the computer, and it's going to save you so much time." That was a lie. Now I know that was a lie, because I work harder now. I do more now with a computer than I ever did without one. Mm-hmm. But it did give us time to think. It did kick a lot of us out of the permanent survival mode, working in the fields, doing all of that hard labor. It gave us time to reflect. It gave us time to think and get into these generations of people going, "I'm not just going to follow. I'm going to figure out what's going on, and I'm going to see this." And I think that's what our kids are doing. I think they're sitting back and thinking, as well as having all of this information out there, to where they're not as heavily indoctrinated. They're not watching Fox News. They're not watching Newsmax. They're not listening to the Koch brothers. They're taking a global view of things and saying, "Hey guys, you're fucking everything up."
We living organisms, we adapt to the environments that we're in. So when we're sheltered, what do? We get really good at being a Christian, or we get really good at being in that sheltered thing. And then the door opens and it's like, "Oh, fuck, this isn't as helpful out here," right? Because we adapt to the environments that we're in. And I think what COVID showed us is that when the world changes pretty fucking fast, it sucks, it's hard, but like overall, there's ways that we have to figure out how to do that. And there's sacrifices of like kids staying home and parents having to figure, like I had to teach my kid while working for a while. Oh, single parenting is not always fun. So it's like all of like, we change when stuff really does happen and it changes, we have to deal with it. Like you said, we do figure that way out. And unfortunately, it's sometimes with casualties and with things that have to change that shouldn't have to. And it sucks sometimes. But what it did show me is that society does have the ability to change some shit really quick when we need to. And I'm hoping that we can start doing that shit before it gets to red, like red alert.
I don't know. I think we might already be there. I mean, there's a movie out there right now that tracks the steps off the edge. I should have been more prepared and thought, never would have crossed my mind to be prepared for that though. But it shows how far over the edge that we are at this point with climate change and it becoming irreversible. Our oceans, I mean, I go back to the bees. It's so rare to see a bee now. I used to run from them as children. They were on every dandelion. Now, I smile when I see one. It's,
Right.
Without these things, we don't have a future.
Maybe I'm too optimistic. Maybe it's the Star Trek.
Balance us all out, Brady.
Maybe it's the Star Trek in me. But I'm also just thinking, like, yeah, when something fails, we find a way to replace it. We find a way.
Yeah, but Mars is the option at this point.
Or like mechanical bees, or like I know that there's like they're Gen. It all goes back to Gen Z. Has found some sort of fungus that eats away at plastics. Like,
yeah, I saw that.
Many weird, like, very like technological, out of the box thinking that I think we need to go through, and that we're going to be forced toward. And I'm not looking for a miracle or whatever, but looking back at society and humanity over the years, when we have hit some major shit, we find a way to overcome it. But then people find a way to take that over, and then we find, and that's the evolution, the back and forth, the swinging of the pendulums of society. And I'm yeah, it's gonna probably take a miracle. It's probably gonna take a discovery, a Gen Z Deus Ex Machina. But I think that there's hope. There is hope that as these problems start coming up with bees and climate change, that technologically we're going to be able to find some patchwork and then hopefully some like actual cures. And then when we get enough of our momentum towards that direction, going in that direction, then it becomes economically feasible and beneficial. There's an invert, and it's like, and I think that we're going to have to hit some of those big crises that create that sort of momentum initiated.
Sorry about them.
Let the dogs out.
I put up Michelle's question. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, I was on.
Over the last couple of years, I've come to believe that we're a virus. Everything can survive. Yeah, everything can survive on this planet without humans. Most, we cannot go either. To go the other way, a frog, a tadpole gone, and our situation collapses. So viruses are very adaptable.
Yeah.
And that's what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
So thinking in a more positive way that we are not a COVID-19 on this planet, what is our role? Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing?
Do you want to go first, Matt?
Oh, my answer could be short. I mean, I don't know. I don't think like, I wouldn't say that there's a meaning to life. I would say that there's something in us that draws out meaning, that we create the meaning. So, I mean, it could be that we're here to learn something. It could be here that we're experiencing something so asinine and crazy that there's some sort of reason that we're doing this. But I love the analogy of like there's no like one meaning of a dance, I think, or a song even. Like
I like that.
If you write a song as an artist and I mean, I studied music in college. If you write a song and you mean for it to mean something, and someone listening to your song draws out other meaning, who are you to say that they're wrong? Because for them it means something different. So I kind of see life as that. Like, I think there can be infinite meaning we draw from it, and the minute we say like, what is the reason for this, I think then we've limited our ability, or yeah, the ability to draw out all the different meaning that we can have. Does that
I would
make
like to
sense?
hope that we're a steward. I would like to hope that we are here.
Would hope.
I mean, ancient aliens believe that the aliens planted us to mine gold, and we really are, those types of things. But I'd like to believe that we are here to be a part of each other, to be like ants, and to function, and to cohabitate, and to grow, and to flourish as a community could. And the only exception to that are the ones who don't want that, who want to be off on their own, and we can honor that. But I think that when we lost our societal pull, when we stopped talking to our neighbors, when we stopped working as a culture, that was the demise of our entire existence. And that falls into the planet, that falls into poverty, that falls into, I mean, just a lack of self-esteem is ruining things at this point. Insecurity and all of these fears are affecting all of our world, and all of these things, to so much that I think the reality is dismissed, right? Because if you're deceptive and thinking, well, climate change isn't real, then you can ignore it. You can do all of those things and say, well, I'm the only thing that matters, right?
Right.
Brady, what say you? Why are we here? What's our role?
I like what Matt said. Yes, we're meaning makers. And so everything that we say is our role or our goal or why we're here, that's going to be very abstract. It's going to be subjective for each one of us. But I think that it is healthy and helpful to have kind of like working goals that we all can kind of like share together that create a better society. So the Humanist Society out of Scotland, they said that humanists believe that we should take responsibility for environmental problems in order to foster a sustainable existence that supports, they say, human welfare and happiness. I like to leave that part out. Just welfare and happiness.
Yeah.
I also think of Star Trek is when we get into the future and there's aliens, like, come on, we shouldn't be talking shit about the Vulcans.
Well, I think if we stop thinking that we're also the top of the food pyramid, that, if we start,
we're alongside. Yes. That's the thing about pets and animals, is realizing that our evolution made us best to live in the environment that we live in, but also with those animals, there's just as much biological engineering through evolution, everything like that is such a valuable life, even though they can't speak our language.
Exactly.
So when we realize that we're alongside these other things that have taken billions of years to perfect to where they are, we want to show respect and love to those species that we've been alongside with for billions of years. And I think that when we realize that, and not just that, oh, well, we're the first one to figure out how to talk, so now let's come up with religion about how we're number one, we're chosen by this thing that's above us, but we made it up in our heads, and you better, whatever, all that fucking bullshit, like, put that aside and realize, like, the stewardship, like you said, the respect and love that we have for this chunk of rock that just happened to be this M-class planet with a perfect just concoction of variables to create life. And the fact that we've been able to survive on this big chunk of rock for this long, and how much we owe it to provide more life for other generations and for other species to go forward. Like, no, we've got to zoom out. We've got to see ourselves not as the top of this, abstract food chain, but that we are alongside it, that we are a part of it. It is inside of us and we are inside of it. And there's no distinction.
I like that.
Yeah, because I mean, depending on your reading of the Bible, it says that we still came after animals. They've been around longer than us. And like, we come from, because we can speak. I don't believe that we're the only ones that can speak, first of all. I mean, I think my dogs talk to each other.
Dolphins,
but they totally communicate.
Oh yeah. Language. Okay, like complex language.
Yeah. So there's so many, and that's why I always go back to the ego, because when you think that we are the ultimate supreme, when you think that God has chosen us, then we can randomly kill, then we can randomly destroy. And that goes back to what we were talking about. I think it was in the green room backstage about how the Armageddon aspect of it, of, let's just destroy this planet because Jesus is going to come back, or we'll go to Mars or something like that. When we set ourselves outside of nature, and Christianity did that, by the way, it emancipated us out of that. It emancipated us out of nature and took us and set us aside to say we were better.
Yeah.
Native Americans, Hindus, Buddhism, all of those still retain their roots in nature. So we are going through this process of like spoiled children. And if I was a God, I'd be like, y'all are brats and you don't deserve any Christmas presents this year. No more. You've ruined
Mama,
everything.
like the movie Mama, like you're the mom. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think this came up the last time I was on this show, so I'm sorry if I'm just a one-trick pony, but what you're saying completely falls into place with Star Trek. The fourth movie, the one about the whales, the voyage home, where there's this big probe coming to Earth, and we all think that it's going to kill us, but it came here to speak. But we thought it was to us, but it wasn't. It was there looking for the humpback whales. But in their future, they were already dead, so they'd go back into 1980s, and there was the mom from Seventh Heaven. You get the whole story, and they take it back. And so it was that idea of like, oh, we think this probe's coming here, and we automatically think that it's for us, but it's not. This probe came to Earth way before we even evolved, communicated with the whales, had a relationship with them, and then left and wanted to come back and check up on their old friends, not us. And so that movie is so ridiculous, but I love it because it shows the importance of conserving those things and to keep species alive and thriving, not just because we want them to live, but because it's beneficial to all of us. And that's what our focus needs to be. From that, we talk about the individuality or working as a culture and as a society, right? I think the best way for us to do that is like the X-Men, where each one of us has our own fucking crazy identity. Each one of them was basically a goddamn drag queen. Let's be honest with you.
Yeah, but that requires honor of self-identity, and we're dealing that with the trans people right now. We don't want to honor differences.
Yeah, and it's horrible, right? But the way that we build the best society and the best way for the X-Men to do is for each one of them to come with their own unique, loud individuality and create a society built on that, not on common beliefs, not on common skin color, but in common humanity and values. And when those values are about breaking down walls and they're not about believing in God is a value, when it's not about a specific brand, but it's about all of us, that's when real change happens. And that's when we really do progress as a society.
I put this up from Michelle because she and I have talked about this. Actually, I have a section in my book about this, and about how our DNA is all the same, with the exception of the octopus. All of our DNA is the same. It's the structure that makes it up and makes it differently.
The fucking what the hell? What are they doing? Where do they come from?
Exactly.
Who dropped that shit off?
I'm showing octopus but all of our DNA is the same. It's just arranged differently, right? So it proves that we are all one. I can't tell you how many people get upset when I say we're animals. We're not animals. No, we are. We
Yeah,
are
yeah.
equals,
Buttigieg has
and
problems with
thinking
that.
that we are separate takes all of that away, and it does give us this ego-driven rule and conquer and type of thing. Matthew, you look like you want to say something.
No, I just yeah, I don't know about the octopus or octopi. But I honestly don't know what's so offensive about saying that we're part of the animal kingdom. Like I don't.
Because Jesus didn't die for them.
Well, fuck that. But like, have you been in nature? It's gorgeous and creative and amazing, and like go in a garden. It's not offensive to be the same as everything in there. Like, it's actually quite awe-inspiring.
It's honor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like the Bible created that ego. It permitted that ego that, like you were talking about, Sherry, of that, oh, well, we're above all of this.
Yeah.
Like this is ours to take or ours to whatever. And yeah, it permitted that, and it created a culture of that. And that's what we grew up in. Now it's time to tear it all down and start.
I mean, I really hope so. One of the things that I really like about California is that I can sit on the grass. Florida has crabgrass. It's sticky, it's hard, it's gross. You can't sit on the grass. And here, just being able to sit on the grass, can't in my neighborhood because it's covered in dog pee. But you can go to a park here and it really sit on. I mean, and just be there, to be in. I mean, nature's all over Florida too, but to have these different types of things, the flora and the fauna, and it's just so amazing. And I look at the tree outside of our property that's at least 150 years old. At least the amount of people that it has seen walk by it every day, to not honor that life, to not honor that growth, to not honor any of that, and to set ourselves aside, I think is the demise of our planet and all of us.
And so much goddamn variety on this.
Right? It's beautiful.
Like you can take pictures of different parts of the world and it's like, this looks like an entirely different planet. Like we just Star Warsed over to Tatooine and now we're on Naboo. Moon of Indar, and everything's so different, but it's all in the same.
It's all in the same. Yeah.
It's all in the same rock. And animals. God, how fucking weird are those things? It's just like aliens that you can share your house with if you have a pet, or like, and you go to a different.
My dogs rule my life. Are you kidding me? I am their bitch. They rule my life.
Yeah,
that's why
I completely let them. It is my life.
I always laugh when people are like, oh, being gay is so unnatural, and I'm like, have you been outside? Like what do you mean unnatural? Like it's a very unique world. Like what do you? I don't know. Are you that sheltered or that in a box where you haven't studied any sort of biology
I think it's
at all?
Blindness. I think they just don't want
willing blindness. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the things, and throughout my deconstruction was finding. I mean, was it Ben Franklin who said, "Look to nature to understand the will of God," and in learning that someone had said that opened up everything for me, because then I started to look at nature. I stopped taking man's word and man's division and all of that and says, okay, talk to me, nature. Tell me what is okay. Finding out that, humans, besides a certain sect of chimpanzees, are the only ones that murder. The only ones that destroy our habitat, the only ones that do not cohesively work together.
There's actually, there's video evidence of gorillas performing a sacrificial ritualistic murder of the former alpha male. It's very chilling.
Was it gorillas or was it chimps? I thought it was chimps.
No, there's I mean, it might be chimps too, but there was, I think, silverback gorillas that were performing a ritualistic sacrifice of their alpha. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so with exception of our cousins.
My cats do some fucked up shit too.
Yeah,
cats are creepy.
But that's what I always go back to. Okay, sins. It's not a sin if it's out there and doing that. I mean, we're all fucked up, right? We all do these crazy things. But I think that if anything, that all of us should focus on our homes and to stop destroying our home planet, and really just disregarding it like the yesterday's trash.
Do you remember Captain Planet?
No.
Matt, did you ever watch that?
I do, but I don't remember like the details.
Well, Captain Planet, he's our hero. He takes pollution down to zero. There's like these group of 5 kids from around the world, and they're like power rings, represent earth, wind, water, earth. It's just like the elements. And then they would shoot up in the sky, and then it was, with your powers combined, I'm Captain Planet. And it was like this really cool, like, ecology, like pro-earth recycling show. It was really like super fucking liberal. So like a lot of like us Christian kids weren't allowed to like watch it. We had to like watch it secretly. But it was kind of cool. Like Whoopi Goldberg was Gaia. She was like this goddess, who came in, and they had like all these like pollution themed villains. And
well, maybe that is. I mean, and you touched that on that earlier, Brady, about if we all just used our strengths. If we all took, if we are going to look at an individualistic view, then look at it as an individual who can make a change with what strengths you have, which passions you have, the limitations, the everything that you can do, and to do it. I mean, that's all we can ask for in life, right? To be the best that we can be and what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we are at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, gentlemen. This was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Matthew, closing words. Where can people find you? Any words of advice to leave us with?
Well, just get involved locally in some sort of way. Work with the homeless. Work at with an LGBTQ group. Do anti-racism work. All of this is intersectional. So if we talk about climate change, we're also talking about economic things. We're also talking about racism. We're all, so everything is intersectional. So, like you said, what are your strengths, and put those to good use. And yeah, if people want to find me, I'm on all the socials at Matthew J. Distefano.
And you have this book coming out?
I have a book. Yeah, it's kind of my deconstruction story. It's basically transcribed and edited audio conversations with Michelle Collins, who is a good friend of mine. She's working on her PhD. No, it's like a PhD, but it's something different. It's a doctorate of psychology. So it's kind of my story, where I came from, where I'm going. I also have my coming out. I'm bi, so I have that part of it in there. And kind of how I came out of evangelicalism. And for people who are deconstructing, it's kind of just a helpful way to sit alongside them with, that you're not alone. It's terrible.
Well, we'll have to do a show for your release and get you on the Human Library, so you can go off and get the book.
That would be wonderful. I'd appreciate that. So yeah, thanks for having me. And if they want to go to allsetfree.com, that's my website.
Okay, Brady, final words of wisdom.
Yeah, I have got the Life After podcast. I've had to put it on hold for a hot minute just because some of my real life has gone crazy.
You know how that is.
Yeah. Family. Ugh. So, yeah, but find the Life After podcast. Did it for 3-4 years and really proud of it and love it. It's important. Important conversations with people about deconstruction, discovering who they are, and reimagining the future. Also, just practically speaking, I want to recommend a couple episodes of Star Trek. Number one, the movie Star Trek 4, Voyage Home, great movie about whales and the importance of saving the planet. Other episodes, Star Trek Voyager, Future's End is a really good one on ecology. True Q from The Next Generation, Saints of Imperfection from Discovery, Force of Nature, that's also Next Generation, and finally, Let Him Who Is Without Sin on Deep Space Nine. Those are all really good episodes to kind of like think about the world and preserving it in a different way just through science fiction.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for this conversation. I hope that we gave our audience some good ideas and ways that they can help. I have truly appreciated you. I'm going to send you backstage. I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this show. Thank you so much for your comments and questions and everything. Comment in there. Tell me what you think when you watch this back. If you weren't watching it live, we're here. Ask anything that you need. And Brady and Matthew, I'm sure, will address anything if you have any questions for that. I'm working on next week's show. I'm going to probably do a show on abortion. So if you're interested on being on the panel, let me know. Whatever you do this week, make sure that you walk in love. It is the most important thing you can do. Walk in love, everybody. I'll see you next week.